musicians and music makers, in this week's live stream, we are going to be wrapping up our indie dance project with part 4, where we'll be focusing on finalizing the arrangements and adding some automation throughout the track. The goal today really is to transform what we've built so far in the last few weeks, turn it into a track that's ready for playing out and testing it out. If you've missed the previous sessions, don't worry, I'll do a quick recap to get you up to speed. As always, feel free to join in by asking any questions you might have or sharing your own ideas in the chat. My goal, as always, on the channel here is to help you level up your music production skills and unlock your creative potential. So without further ado, let's dive in and finish crafting our indie dance track. So we're just going to jump straight into a bit of a listening exercise. Let's jump in around bar 33, where we've got up to so far, and then we'll get stuck into some new activities for today. So hopefully, if you're just joining in on the stream, that's a little bit of a recap of where we are up to at this point in time. A very good afternoon, Chavi dias, buenas tardes. Hope you're well, my friend. So that's just a little recap. We're just testing out levels, making sure everything's working. What we were doing I've sort of taken my time a bit with this project, building my way up through 3 parts to get to here. This is where we finished up in the last stream. We've got over here our peak loop, which is kind of where we signed off at the end of part 3. And we've also got this break loop over here as well that we worked on earlier. So right from part 1, we sort of started building these 2 sections. So at the moment, I'm arranging the track left to right, or from the very intro, and working my way along, in a sense, to eventually join up, certainly with this peak section. So this loop here is going to be the main peak, or the end of the build, let's say, before we go into a break. And we're just kind of working our way towards that. No templates here, no kind of fixed plan. It's sort of done by feeling a little bit. We broke the track down at bar 65, but that wasn't sort of following any particular structure other than it kind of felt right. So there are many, many ways you could be working on the arrangement of a song. You can do subtractive arrangements. We could have performed all the parts live into here. So there's many, many choices, but in this case, I kind of like sometimes to work at bringing things across from these 2 loops essentially placing them where we want and sort of working our way through as the track plays through and tells the story. So while I was listening there's one thing that I had on my mind to do with this rim effect. So we're just going to dive in now and get started. Also, I'm going to be doing things today like, looking at transitions, automation, finishing the arrangement. That's really the goal here. So in this little clip here, I want to create a little variation of it, and maybe I'll do it at the very end here. So I'm just going to split it and highlight that little clip. Good idea as always to give it a bit of a different color. And I'm just going to try with that to kind of pitch it down in the scale. So I'm just going to take these notes here, and I'm just going to make a little bit of downwards movement. We could turn it sort of into a bit of a chord. Play, skip, play, skip. Let's hear what that sounds like. Yeah, maybe something like that. And that little transition is that little sort of new part there, that could also come in handy earlier in the track. So sometimes when you make a little theme like that, I might actually copy that all the way over to here. And we might use it just right in the intro for a second, just again as a little bit of a switch somewhere, just to give us a little bit more variation. So maybe in the B section here of the very first 8 bars, perhaps we'll have it here because we also do have a little turnaround here. So let's try it where I put it. See if it makes sense there. If not, we won't use it, but let's give it a try and put everything in for context. Yeah, I still think it's going to make sense as a turnaround, so let's try it with the other element up here as a little end of phrase. I'm fine with that. And we could use it again here if we wished. So yeah, we've now got a little sort of element that we didn't have in that particular clip that we can use as an end of phrase turnaround, just highlighting those sections. And as I said, once you come up sometimes with these sort of themes, you can then use them in other places, but let's not overdo it. Let's not overcook it. Let's say that we've got those, but we're not going to put them every 8 bars and sort of like let people understand that that's going to happen all the time. But back over here. So I want to fade this out. So let's say we bring the vocal effects all the way to the very end here, and then we'll have a look at the track itself. We could use the filter actually on the simpler, but we could also add an auto filter at the very end, which would then include all of the different effects and things that we've got processing it here. So maybe we'll do it that way around, because if we use this to automate, we're just going to be filtering the sample. Whereas if we add the filter at the end of the chain, essentially, then we're going to be filtering everything in here. And let's get our automation up. Let's turn it on and off where we want it to be controlled first. So we'll pop in some breakpoints here. By the way, there's some really nice automation touches coming in the Ableton 12.2 update, which you can maybe take a look at in a future video. I'm working in 12.1 here, but in 12.2, you can do all sorts of fun stuff where you can just enter these breakpoints, automation points with the keyboard. You can just hit return and the point flashes. And while it's flashing, you can then move it left and right with your arrow keys, up and down arrows. And you can also scroll through all of the different things you can choose to automate with the arrow keys. So some really nice touches there coming in 12.2 that make automation a bit faster. All right, so we've automated it on and off where we want it. Great. Let's now grab the frequency cutoff, and let's maybe just take this as basic ramp, sweeping it down in terms of cutting away the high frequencies. And And I want it almost dead silent in this last piece. So let's try first pulling that back now and seeing how it sounds, not just sort of dying away. Okay, I can maybe even try pulling it back further. Kind of want it to have disappeared at the right point, so there's not kind of clash with what comes in, but it also feels like really natural that it sweeps down like this. Too much. Still a little too much. Better. Okay, so I'm just going to replay that one more time, just from somewhere in the middle there. This is a bit of detail work, by the way, ladies and gents. This is kind of the thing you do when you're sort of starting to sort of dive in and make this a workable arrangements, transitions, details. So I made a note, by the way. I have this sort of workflow where I'm using MIDI tracks and naming tracks just to give myself like a notepad workflow. So right up the top here, that whole track to-do list, it's got some suggestions here. Pitching things down, sweeps and crashes, rising or descending chords, you know, things for me to remember or maybe to try out. So feel free to try those things out if it helps. Okay, maybe a bit more of the open hi-hat also now pulled back. Okay, also more drums out from the top. So I'm really trying to pull out a lot of energy here. So if you're following along what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to make this really drop here so that when we come back in, it's going to be a nice end of break. It's not just going to sound like a playthrough. Be very careful when you're working on sort of beginnings of breaks and end of breaks that they make sense, that there's connection to what happened before and what's going to happen after. And at the end of the break, we want to kind of get rid of lots of energy. The more energy you take away here, sweeping away of frequencies, taking out parts, the better we're going to drop when on this side when we come back in. So let me just mute all of this. So again, maybe we creep a little bit in here. And what have we also got? So again, we've got some previous turnarounds that I've created. So we might sort of see what that sounds like. No, so I'm not going to use that one there. And do I have a fill? Did I make a little fill? So we've got this kind of, yeah, this one here could be interesting perhaps to copy. So again, I'm going back, looking at little themes that I've done along the drum track here. And maybe I can paste one of those here and just create a little roll or fill here. Yeah, so that has a few little claps. So which sound is the clap in the kit? This one here. Something like that, and we might just again color that something different so we know that's a new theme. If we zoom out and look at that track, we haven't used that anywhere else before, so we've now got a new little theme here, and we might even just write in the title here little fill or clap fill, something like that, just so we don't get lost. And we might repurpose that again, that might come out at another point. So we've kind of removed a lot of clutter here. And that could have a delay on the end of it. And let's try one of our little snare and tom fill combinations, which is down in this rack that I built earlier. So let's turn off automation for a second, grab this little fill here, and that could live in a few places. We don't want to copy it there. Let's copy one here and one here. And let's try the first one. We'll mute those. So yeah, I've filled the space up with new things, but we've cleared out that instrument, faded the vocals out, we've faded the open hi-hats out. So we've sort of shined the spotlight on the little vocal chop that we've got in here. We've now got a couple little drum fills, we've got a little bass turnaround. So all of that just kind of adds a little bit of uniqueness there. And in theory, the energy out should help now the transition of this section drop a little bit harder. Let's have a listen now, how it sounds when we cross over. Okay, I'm wondering whether we can just do a little bit of a modification on that chop down there. Could actually work where it came in. Let's try it like this. So just halving the vocal a little bit, changing a little bit of the shape of it. All right, I'm satisfied with that. So let's say this is another chop here. Chop number 2. Xavi Díaz, tiene mucho rollo. Muchas gracias. Buen rollo. Ojalá es que sí. All right. So now that we're sort of on our way in this direction here, we've sort of moved from where we were last week. We got up to the end of here. Okay, so now we're in a new section of 8 bars right here. So if you want to put a marker there, we can, just to know that this is kind of the new starting point for today, with our goal to get all the way over to this peak loop and sort of the end of where the white track is at the very top. So in this section here, I would like a change. I want something to kind of switch up things, add something new, take something away along those lines. This whole white track of the bass line, it needs the filter opening as well, which is going to change things a lot. So give you a little demo of that if we're listening to the filter frequency here. So that's going to be being automated to, again, give us some build, a bit of character in there as we open things up. So we've got the low bass joining the higher bass, which we were relieved of for a while, so that's already interesting. But again, maybe we could try stripping it down a little bit here and just creating a bit of ebb and flow on our way to the drop, or the build, the end of the build. So let's hear what it sounds like if we take that open hi-hat out. Quite nice. So that gives us a little change there. Let's bring in a fill. And not there, let's have it actually here. Let's also have some of our other turnaround little elements at the very end of this phrase here. So maybe we leave this one out. So just that open hi-hat out there, that just gives me a little bit of a tension change, right? Just gives me a little bit of, something different. You've got to keep your listener on their toes. They're, as a human, we are very good at picking out patterns and identifying repetition. And if you just keep repeating something and you don't look for ways to it can be very subtle, but just something that catches the person's ear that's listening to it, or the dancers on the dance floor. It doesn't have to be always fireworks and everything going off, but you want to keep people engaged in your track, right? And keeping them on their toes and listening. So if we sort of open up this whole section, hopefully we're not sort of boring anyone here. We're working our way along. So let's actually have a look at automation for a second here. So I'm just going to pull that down and just show you what I'm doing here. So let's just make that a little bit bigger here so you can kind of see. So this is the bass line, the upper bass, the sort of more brighter drift bass. And what we're going to do here is we've got a little bit of a trick here. We're using the envelope as a part of the modulation or automation that's going on here. So instead of grabbing the filter cutoff and the frequency as your first move, what I'm actually doing here for something different is opening up how much filter envelope, this envelope 2 here, is being applied to that filter cutoff. And that gives you also quite an interesting opening and closing of the filter frequency, because we're kind of saying how much envelope versus how little. And so that's what we were hearing before I even started to grab the frequency as well. So I always kind of plan to do the frequency cutoff as well, this value, but what we're listening to in the change in the background there is all to do with the amount of envelope that's being applied to this. Right? So it could be quite a nice way to approach things a little bit different again, just to switch things up, to approach it in a way that you might not have thought about. Actually, I might put that back and we might actually go down a bit and then reopen that. And at the same time, as I said, we're also going to put in some points, and we can kind of keep it perhaps low key here, but we're definitely going to be ramping it up over here to really open it out just at the time when it drops. Okay, the end of the build. So that's all going to help get a little bit of the bass line vibing away in the background. So again, we've reached this section where the open hi-hat comes out. Let's get out our solo. Okay, so I'm going to decide what's going to come in again here. I like that change, and I'm also going to bring the open hi-hat in, but I'm not going to bring it in at the end of the phrase. Let's have it kind of halfway through. Let's carry our fill over as well. So let's kind of get that over into here. Again, in here, I'm not going to just kind of keep repeating what I've already done here. We might use some of it. Perhaps we will repeat that little vocal piece there, and we'll try this little reverse synth FX. And by the way, these are all built from the track, and if you missed that, just pop back. This is a part 4 of a 3-part series from scratch. This idea started from scratch, and we built it out to where we are now, so you can kind of catch up on how all these pieces came together. And if you are here in the stream with us, do feel free to say hello in the chat, and also drop any questions in there. Let us know where you're tuned in and listening from. Skip it along a bit. I mean, what we might try and do with this open hi-hat is actually bring it across here, but we'll automate it, which we've already used in the break over here. So we've already got action that we can grab. And let's say we do the reverse, where we just bring this in from almost silence. Also, just with the drum kit, on this little section here, let's do a little split. Let's get out of automation because it's very easy to do what I just did there, and that is add a breakpoint that we don't need. So let's hide automation, split the end here of this phrase where we're kind of reaching the end of this phrase, and let's get in here and let's see if we can pull out like a whole bar of kicks. We might even do, let's try 2 bars first. This will make like a little mini drop in here. Let's do 1 bar. Let's color that so we know it's something else. Nice. I really like where this is coming in. I don't know if you spotted that, if you could hear that. That was really nice where this engages because of that ramp now. It just kind of comes in, I think, almost in the perfect kind of sweet spot where it's just opening up. Kind of like how I had it before, right? I had it like that sort of coming in. Instead, I've dragged it out and we've just got this filtering of it coming in, which is a bit different. So you can always think of this like, you know, it's kind of fun. You can think of all the different moves that you can try out and find, you know, and if you think about it being a bit different to something you've already done before, well, that could be quite useful, right? Because again, we're going back to that, keeping our listener on their toes. So this is, for me, going to be the peak in here. So we can kind of basically make sure that we've got the bulk of our things here, that we're in this original peak loop over here. So what we might do is take, just before we do what I'm about to do, let's maybe say we take all of this stuff over here, some miscellaneous things we're not using, but let's say we now drag that right out of the way or right across to the very end sort of the project here. And we might as well keep that peak marker where it is. And then there is going to be a break. How long that break will be, I'm not sure. And then finally we can sort of marry things up. So that's going to come across to there. The bass is going to come across. The low bass is going to come across. We might switch from this 2, which is a bass variation. So we've got this kind of little turnaround kind of second bass here. We might bring back the 1, which is over here. So let's maybe say we copy that, bring that across into there. So we've got another switch up there. Open hi-hats. Let's check the automation on that. So it's opening right up. So, yep, we don't have any issues there. That's going to work. Let's copy that just to pull that out a little bit further. What else do we have in the peak? Well, we had the return of the rim FX. Let's switch off automation again. Let's hide it so it doesn't get too confusing. Let's bring that across, see if we can bring that in. Vocals all the way over. And we might try even this vocal fade out that we already have in the break. So again, that's already been done and automated. We might actually try that kind of here and see if that makes sense. Let's turn off locked automation and see if we can drag a copy of everything. Okay, so let's try that, see what that sounds like. Might not work, but we'll give it a go. And what else do we have in the peak? We still had the reduced kind of pad chord, so we'll bring that across. And then we also switch up the pattern down here, so we might try that switch just in the peak. If it feels unnatural, we won't go with that. And then at the very end here, we might have a little bit of this action here. I think we can actually now have a repeat of that. And maybe an end of phrase type. Let's try this one here. Lots and lots of variations here, which is never a bad thing. We've got lots of things we can use to create little fills and transitions and things. So, and also we could ramp up a little bit And I'm just remembering things I've done previously. So in the break over here with this drum fill, pretty sure there's some automation of a delay, and it kind of does that. So let's maybe copy all of that, and we'll use that again at the very end here of the drop. So it's coming in about there. So we'll try that and see what that sounds like. So we're sort of building where the peak marker is essentially actually where the break's going to start. So I probably could put the peak back a bit and the break there. Okay, that makes maybe a bit more sense. So what I'm trying to do here is a pre-chorus, end of break, all those kind of things is what we're looking at here. We don't need that. Let's get that out. So let's see, was it too much that came in here at the same time? No, I think it all works together. Nice. So happy with that. We need to review it in a bit. That is, step back and play back from a little bit earlier and just make sure all of that where we've been sort of working today all the way along kind of makes sense, and we don't get kind of a sense of boredom or anything like that. So we've already got a break scene that we previously had built. So we're going to bring across some of those elements. So we've got a drum kit version for the break. We've got the open hi-hat, so that's all the same. The bass is the same. We've got a little bit of a tom fill kind of pattern thing here, which we might copy. And we'll also just check the automation on that as well, because I feel like there's, yeah, it's over here actually. So we might see how that sounds. That should be connected to this, but because I dragged it and the automation was locked, it's kind of got separated. But now we're going to join it back up in theory. So all of those little fills should connect to that, which I believe they do, but we'll check that in a little bit. So that's going to go through there. And one of the biggest things that we do here in the break is we come into these chords. It's a change in the pad chord track. So maybe we'll start with that straight at the beginning of the break, and we'll see if it works. And if not, we might change that a bit. We're also going to use this 100%. That's the end of break with the vocals a bit, all this vocal FX part. And we've got lots of little pieces we can fill in and around. So let's kind of see what we're going to carry forward into here and what's going to get removed. So let's start with a bit of a playthrough and then we'll work from there. Okay, too many tom fills here, so this last one I think can be out. Let's try that again. Nice, so with the vocal FX, I'm going to carry that right across in this section. Check the automation again, filter device on. We want the filter, but we also want the frequency. So pop them down in a lane, makes life a lot easier. So I'm going to bring that right across to there. And it's going to fade out into this break. might also try this end of phrase drum section here. Drop it out for a bar of kicks. I'm not going to do that actually. I liked how it was before. Okay, so now I'm just going to pop some detail in here. So let's maybe try back to the 2 here on the little bass fills. Let's get this hi-hat filtering away. So similarly to our previous break, we're going to get our energy out and down here. And I feel like this is the end of break here, and I might even have a bit more into this. So this kind of feels about right for an end of break. Could be a short break. We don't have to make it super long, but it's currently 8 bars. So could do a 16 bar break. Let me just check that. Yeah, it's just 8 bars, right? Hang on. 4, 8, no, it's 16 bars. Okay, fair enough. Just check my maths here. Bit of a late night last night, maybe not doing the best on the maths today. But yeah, that looks like 8 and 16. So it is a 16 bar already section. Okay. We just work with it. I don't know that it needs to be double that, but we could try it anyway. Let's see what happens. Let's say if we put all of this all the way down, so we make sure that we've got everything highlighted here. And we're going to use a little trick that Ableton can help us here, because it can help us move all of this to the right so that we can sort of go in front of there with a bit of silence. So Command I is your friend for that. And of course, it just messes up a couple of things, like at the very top here, but it's not really an issue at all. We can put that, drag that back across. But now we've got kind of, because that felt like very much the end. And I think we could try it for a longer break, see what it feels like. So we're just going to say that was a good ending. What happens before that? So we might actually bring a few of these things across. So let's have our drum kit. That's for sure going to come out then more here. I think we can also bring a bit of bass into here, so maybe halfway through, and then we'll filter that out. So we're going to do a bit of that. The low bass can probably stay out. And we faded out the vocal. Let's try a bit of that across. Also that, I thought it sounded quite nice coming in, the pad chords directly. Also this melody carrying across sounded quite good. All right. So we could have a little bit more detail. Maybe we'll have this vocal in that section there. Some of our turnaround friends. End of phrase in here, about midway through the break. So if we do this, we're extending the break double length, break starting there. So we've got a few ideas here. Let's hear what that sounds like, and then we can go from there. And let's bring our envelope down on the filter here to match something like we have previously. I'll also close that down. Going to fine tune my automation a little bit here. And down the bottom here, I think we can kind of really build this kind of little bit of an ebb and flow here, particularly with some instruments that we haven't sort of played around with yet with filtering, which is either the pad chord or the sequence. So let me just check if we've got any automation rolling previously. So we did with the pad chord. We kind of had at one point the device automated, let's say we're on. Just checking what we've got here. We've got dry, wet. It's probably actually interesting because there's a whole scope there to change around a little bit what's happening. So the device was switched off and it's been off. So it should really be on here. And it's fine that it's actually quite low. So what we might actually do is leave that breakpoint there and open that reverb out a bit. That will sound actually quite interesting in an area that we haven't heard yet. So we'll wash those out a little bit. There's something funny there. Okay, it's to do with the vocal FX track. So what's kind of happening there? We've got a little bit of something going on here. Just going to check that. Yeah, so that's what I was kind of hearing. Why is that occurring then? Must be a tiny little repeat or something. So maybe we'll just nudge it back a little bit, see if that fixes our problem. Yeah, that's better. Let's try a little bit of a halfway. Okay, so we're still getting that little opening back up. No, okay, so the last move there. So just kind of cleaned up that little transition there. There was a little re-emergence of the vocal. We don't want that. Okay, so that reverb has changed this area a lot, and not in a good way actually. So it was previously off, so maybe perhaps we'll leave that out for now. So this was off, so we'll turn that off. I'm guessing it's not the reverb, that's why it's the filter, I understand. So this makes sense, this automation up here, but a lot less. So as this is the main break, we're going to spend a bit of time here just getting everything dialed in, so we've got a nice kind of takeover from the peak, the end of the build, and we're going into the start of the break, and then we've got the end of the break. So we're sort of halfway in the middle here. We could put another marker. So we've got 2 sections to the break. We're just going to try and get, again, at the end of the break here, lots and lots of energy out as much as we can. So it's going to drop nicely there. And now we're just sort of, you know, getting a bit of feeling into the first part of the break, fading a few things out, and we might do even a bit of a mini sort of breakdown, then build back up again. And I think this track, the sequence track, would sound quite good with a filter on it. So we might try that, and again, we'll just use a auto filter because we can grab everything and filter it if we put it on the end here, rather than using the instrument itself. But let me just listen to the instrument itself as well for a second. Yeah, so there's a lot of room to brighten that, but we actually, I think, want to darken it rather than brighten it. So I think we definitely go with the auto filter. So let's again turn it on. And let's just check what we've got going on there. What is already in the automation lane down here? What are we automating on and off? The echo. Okay, understood. So we've got a little bit of that coming on at some point as well, and that's the review automation up the top here, is about bringing in a bit of echo actually. So it's switched off. The idea was to sort of bring a bit of that in perhaps at some point where, again, we could create a lot of tension with that. So it's good just to remind myself what that was about actually. So I'm going to put here a bit more information. Echo automation, if we need it. It's off at the moment. Okay, so good to know. Right, filter. Let's have that on off in its own lane. Let's turn it on, off here, on here, and we can size that nice and small, bring it down, and we're going to grab the cutoff, put that in its own little lane here. We're going to try and darken this, but what we might do is darken it and then bring it back. Like I said, we might have a little mini build inside of here. From here actually. So I'm just using my ear here to sort of feel out. Right, getting somewhere. So let's say we really get this right back, opened out and bright. And what we might do then is we know that we can brighten this up a lot with the filter in the instrument itself. Let's bring that in as well. So lots of automation, ladies and gents, as well going on here, but it's all about getting that tension. So again, in here, we're going to set that, and let's open that out a bit at this end part here. Right, so that's the kind of idea there. We're going to open this right up at the end. So we're taking it down, then we're going to bring it back, giving that feeling, that anticipation that we're going to drop it here. Nearly. So on the pad chord, let's see what we can do here, because it's got a lot of reverb on it, or we can certainly make it have a lot of wet reverb here at the end. And I think for that, we could perhaps pull it right back and it will just be a reverb tail in this last bit. And we might borrow something earlier, the very end of the drums up here as well. Okay, let's bring some of it. All right, so it's going to come all the way. Decision's made, doesn't feel right if it's not there, but again, we might filter it a bit. So we've got a filter that we can play with. Not that extreme, but we'll just turn it on at the end here. And we'll go and grab it and the frequency of it, which is here. Okay, so what happened there was this kind of little turnaround that I just added on the drum kit. It's got some kicks in it. Didn't actually sound too bad, a bit of a happy accident there. So I might actually redo that again For the moment, I think that's going to work good. Could be a little bit of adjustment and fine tuning here, but it feels like we've got some nice tension in there. So we've got our peak, end of break, we've extended the break out. So let's now work our way to the end of the track. It's going to be a bit of a longer track than sometimes you might end up doing. I mean, that's one of these things, like the way we're arranging it here is very organic. So there's no kind of template or necessary certain time that I'm aiming for, but I do want to make it DJ friendly and I don't want to make it sort of boring because it's too long. So sometimes when you end up with a longer track, you might want to go back, which we will be doing, and just review and make sure that it makes sense to be that length, because perhaps over in here somewhere we've got a whole 8 bars or something of not nonsense, but just something that doesn't really offer a lot of change or interest or variation. I think we're okay, but we have a lot of parts to work with in this track, which has been really helpful when it comes to kind of that situation, because we've got so much to work with. It's been easy to sort of, you know, keep things interesting and evolving over time, and yeah, as I said, not end up with a boring track, but as I said, we can end up with a longer one. So what we might not have here is just a bridge. We might just end up with a bit of a fade out over sort of 16 bars, but I think it would feel a bit strange if it was faded out that quickly, just even visually. So let's say we're doing something like that, just roughly. And we're going to, let's say, have, just going to copy over the bits that we're likely to be using in here. So we're going to definitely have our basses. Let's keep with the white bass. We'll check the automation in a second, which is really important. We're going to maybe, again, return to the 1 here for a switch up, different bass variation. It's a different pitch. Let's have that, and let's run that out maybe there as an idea. The open hi-hat could be interesting. Perhaps we don't bring that back in. Let's see. We might definitely have some of our nice drum fills in here. Roughly. We haven't had the vocal again for a bit, so maybe we use that as part of our outro. The chords are interesting. Perhaps they die away there and they don't reappear. These are the sort of some of the options we have. We could also perhaps change to this section towards the outro, extend this over. All right, let's just have a little listen to the end of drop, and then we can kind of fine tune these things. Just going to go back there. Do I want that bass in here at the end? Okay, so we need the open hi-hat. It's too big a drop in energy, so that's a decision that's going to absolutely carry over here. And a little tip for you, if you're watching the live stream, and do, by the way, feel free to say hello. Let us know how you're doing. Let us know if you've got any questions or anything along those lines. So often what you'll find is that this section after the drop or main break in here is generally pretty similar in energy to what's happened over here. It's kind of like a mirror, and the reason I'm bringing the open hi-hat over here is because it's not stripping it down there doesn't make so much sense. We want to sort of be euphoric and kind of be as up there as we were at the end of the build into the break when we come out of it. So just watch out for that one. It's one that can make a track really fall flat and not sound that good at all, because it just doesn't have the oomph when it comes back. So as I said, you can think of these as often, like, it's nice to have a little bit of difference in them, but they can often be quite similar, virtually a mirror. In some tracks, they are essentially a mirror of what happened before the main break. So we're going to take that open hi-hat out eventually. Maybe we'll actually take it right to the end of the track. We're going to fade it right out, and I think we've got as low as, what, 1.9, which means that's sort of more or less silence. So we could copy that breakpoint actually. Let's do that. Do it this way. And we'll just remove a couple of those, so that should get us already to about the right point there. So that's good. Let's try that again. Let's check some of our automations down here. Okay, so we need to fix what's going on up here. So it was sounding nice how it kind of was building back up again on the bass line over here. So let's build that back up. And what's our maximum sort of peak here was 100%. So we can probably reach that a little bit later than we have there. And on the low pass or the low cutoff, let's also kind of match that where it opens up. Dial that into taste in a moment. And then we're going to bring that down again. I'm going to fade it down like we did here. So let's just kind of set that up a little bit. Lots of detailed work today as well, but that's kind of what kind of happens here when you get sort of stuck into transitions, arranging, automation. Dr. Bones, very good afternoon to you. Hope you're well. Great to see you here. Okay, so we got right down to 149 when we took it out. So again, we're going to kind of copy those numbers over here. Again, you can copy the automation points and paste them if you like, but we can do it also like that. All right, let's try that again. Might also try this vocal in here at the very end. Could work, but it needs a little bit of integration with everything else to make space for it. That's the vocal that I just added at the end here. So in here. Now we could also have this in here as well, which is the rim FX. But like I was speaking about a moment ago, in the peak, before I went into the break, I did have that up here and I faded out the vocal. So what we might do, again, we're trying to keep our listener on the toes. We won't bring it in straight away. We'll bring it in a little bit later and we'll make that sort of part of the fade out. And therefore we incorporate it, but we don't just kind of slap it in where, you know, the end of where the, you know, drop happens, just again to create a little bit of interest. And I think this bass automation is too low when it comes in. So again, we might not have it low. We might actually go the other way around. So we come back in and we filter it out. And similarly here, we start much more open or fully open. Let's try it that way. That works. So bass right open on the filters and envelopes, and we're going to just fade that out. So let's just have a little repeat in our drums up the top here of, again, a little bit of a phrase changer just to keep ourselves on our toes there as well. So we've got some options there. Maybe we do it after 8 bars. I don't really need to have put in a few more markers, which would be really helpful. So if you're sort of, you know, not sure where you are with that, you can always drop a click down somewhere on the grid and pop in a line like that, and that is 8 bars, right? And you can kind of then zoom out and you can kind of see where you are. So if we were going another 8 bars along, then we pop another marker there and keep going like that. So you can divide your track up. Why 8 bars? Well, for me, it's sort of a point where I like to have something a little bit different going on. Sometimes you can go longer than that, sometimes shorter than that, but it's a point where I like to remind myself I'd quite like to change something, have something a little bit different happen. So let's try this little drum change here at the end of that sort of 8 bar phrase, not quite like that, and that'll just give us a little bit of the kicks come out here, a little bit of a mini drop of sorts. And so if we're going to do that there, we could actually bring this in here. It would make kind of sense. Or alternative to that, because I'm still not actually sold on that, let's put that back. We alternatively could also use it as a switch on our patterns down here on the sequence. We've got 2 patterns. Let's try that. That works better for my ears. And I think what we'll do here, this is all spontaneous, by the way, it's just sort of feeling it out. Okay, I've done this plenty of times before, but it's kind of like knowing what we've got here. You're sort of balancing a few things, figuring out what you're automating, figuring out what you're using, what you're taking away, what you're sort of changing and altering. But it's, as I said, it's not scripted. And of course, we need to listen back later and make sure it all makes sense, but we're kind of getting a nice framework happening here. So what I'm thinking here, fade out, so we'll reuse that over here, and we'll have a vocal fade out of sorts. So let's make sure we don't have that happen just there. Oh, hang on a second, let's just check everything else is fine. So yeah, it only switches on there, so that's okay. and we can actually clear the top up here because it's down here. So I'm kind of like, the idea here is to change and slowly fade out that vocal effects and bring in the rim so they sort of change over with each other at that point. That's a bit of the idea there. Okay, so a little bit of detail work here. We've also got down on this sequence a filter all set up nicely that we used in the break. I'm not going to use this. This is kind of where we rebuilt a little bit in the breakdown. So I'm going to, let's just close that lane up a bit and we can drag and reorder those. So let's put it just down that bottom part there. This one here is going to be part of my fade out. So yes, I'm going to use that. And yes, I'm going to fade things out over time, pretty much from when it starts coming in actually. So all the way, let's just try that a bit better than that. So let's just drag that back like that, and then we can bring that in a bit closer, and we'll need to turn our device on for that to happen so it can actually go all the way across like so. So that should help fade that out. We might also be fading out the rim in the end. But we don't have any current, something already set up to do that, but we'll take a look at that in a moment. And I'm thinking in here as well, I actually kind of thought that maybe the pads could make a little bit of a return towards the end here as well, somewhere in here, and just the stripped down version of it. So let's maybe try that as well and see what that sounds like. Don't mind that at all. Thinking about what I'm going to use from my little vocal effects and little chops to do some little phrase changes here as well. So let's have that in there perhaps. And I think this kind of main drum change up here can come right in front there perhaps as well, just at the end of that section to the real outro. Let's maybe leave this out. No. So what we can do is head back over to our intro, and there was definitely some slightly different variations of this. So let's copy this little section here, bring that over, and maybe where this comes back in, it's not going to be as busy as that. So let's try something like this. And let's move that over. Better. Okay, that could be a nice point here instead of that little melodic sort of sequence reversed effect, we could try our main kind of vocal chop here at that point, perhaps. Let's try that. Or maybe not that position. Yeah, that's pretty much the idea there. Let's have a little, again, final little piece of that. Actually, I've got already the element there. Let's try. Okay. Maybe I can combine them in a second. We'll look at that. And if this carries on a little bit past here for 1 or 2 bars, I want to kill the tail off of that chord track. Down in here. Hi Nakshatra, good afternoon to you. Just tuning the outro of this track here before we give it another run through. So I want that chord pad just to fade away by itself there. This drum kit needs a bit of reduction on it. So let's already do that. And what we can do is, again, we can go over to our intro, and there's a section there of drums where I've got the kick drum, but it's filtered out. So if we maybe have that for a little bit of the start of this final sort of fade, let's try that. Just going to fix something here at the very end. There's a little kick fill. I'll take that one away. Right, I think we have a rough ending there, but I also want to check in a little bit. How do we do for, like, if you were DJing this track out and you wanted to mix a track into the outro, is it a bit rushed? That would be my only concern here. Is it a bit too busy in this area here? Is there still a lot going on in the last, 16 bars or so? So these are 8-bar chunks where I've got the markers. So, is that section, let's say here, from 5, so if we were to put a little note here on it, let's try that again. So let's say DJ outro, right? And We could do the same at the start actually, but you know, is there enough space there for somebody to mix nicely into a track? Is it a bit too busy? Do we need to carry the track on a bit longer? So let's maybe do a playthrough. And also over here, we can kind of look at all of this section here almost as the DJ intro, right? So this track, I'd like to test it out myself and play it in a club and play it on the radio and all those good things. So let's say we've got a DJ intro here. Well, let's just see how that feels. I know the intro is pretty sparse, we say, pretty open. And let's also just check to see in case anywhere in the heart of the track on our way to the peak and the main break, did we at any point kind of end up with a bit too much of the same in this area here particularly. So let's maybe pop a few markers, extra markers in. So we've got, let's actually do a little bit of housekeeping here, otherwise it's a bit confusing. So we've got marker 1 there. That's sort of like first verse or first section where the bass comes in. We've got a little mini break here. There's a little break. Try that again. And then we've got the other side of that. And that's kind of like, again, you could say split into a little bit. It's section 2, but that section 2 also around about from here is technically the build, which then links up with the peak. So we're just going to get our housekeeping done here a little bit, and we've got the break, and then we can kind of remove some of these markers. There's a bit too many. Now I like having a bridge in my track, and if I had a bridge, it would be in this area here. But again, I just want to be careful I didn't rush the outro, because I was a bit conscious that we were making a long track here. But sometimes, hey, excuse me, if it makes sense, it makes sense. So you don't really want to concern yourself too much with numbers. Excuse me. Right, so DJ outro is now where it belongs. And that would be sort of, you know, the very final outro over there kind of thing. All right, so playthrough. I'll walk you through if I make any adjustments as I go along, but yep, let's see how it sounds and go from the top, as we say. And also, really good way to do this is if, you know, normally at this point in time, I would probably render things to audio and go and have a listen to it in the car, at home, in the headphones, all the different good places that you can listen back to it and judge it for the arrangement and for the structure that way. But in this case, we are going to be still in Ableton Live. We're in a live stream here, so we're going to stick with it in Ableton. We're just going to move all these extra pieces over here. We've pretty much used all of them, but there are some parts that I haven't used. So you never know, they might come in handy still, but at some point I'm going to, and I didn't even use that whole track, so I'm just going to delete that. I don't feel like I needed that. Some of these things might come in handy, so let's do a save as well while we're at it, just in case. You never know what might happen around the corner. So let's save the work we've got so far. This is part 4, by the way, so if you're watching this video for the very first time, this is part 4 of, yeah, obviously 3 parts previous, making this track from scratch. And I've walked through, you know, the idea and the sound design that went on and the synth sounds I made as we went along. So there's lots of stuff to dig into there if you haven't been sort of with me through the last couple of weeks or few weeks as I've been going along. And I spent a bit more time on the music idea of this track. It definitely feels to me like a track where I would play it, would probably release it, would want to go ahead with it, whereas some music ideas, they don't, you know, end up, you know, you don't end up feeling that way about them. Okay, so so I've spent a little bit more honest time, and as I said, now it's kind of at a point where the feedback would be, how is this arrangement working? How's the balance of the sounds? I would perhaps test it out. I would then mix it down. And there are some other professional moves we could do here. You know, we could fatten up things. So if the bass is a bit weak in a club, or we listen back and we think that things don't have enough weight to them, we could definitely layer up some of the instruments in this track that are, yeah, just kind of, I quite like making my tracks quite minimal, so there's lots of room to breathe and space. But a lot of professional producers, and some of them that are sharing their work on YouTube, they are, you know, they'd have 5 different basses and 5 different chord tracks, or not that many, a few different layers of synths. But when you start doing that, you have to make sure every one of those layers is contributing something to the story. Otherwise, it's just extra frequency and extra mud. So now we can delete all that stuff over there. Right, and we're going to listen back in Ableton. So what we're going to do that is we're going to head over to the session view, and we're going to make sure the overview is on, which it already is, which is a great feature of Ableton. A lot of people sleep on this. So you can have that open in the session view, and we can see all of our beautiful arrangement here, and you can actually see the markers as well, and you can click in here and you can launch play from positions in here, and just hit play. So it's a way to stay connected to the session view, the arrangement view if you wish to, but at the same time we can resize that, get it out of the way, because trust me, if you're over here in Ableton and you've been working on music, I've been doing this for an hour and a half, I might be looking at this and convincing myself that it's a kick-ass arrangement and the structure is great, and I'm actually not even listening to it. And so now it's a case of listening and hearing, does that arrangement work? Is there something that stands out that doesn't work? Is there a nasty sound that happens somewhere? And then we start making notes again and fix that. And even along my top list here, I wasn't really studying that all particularly today. This is my notepad track, but there are things there that we could incorporate. So we could do some sweeps and crashes if we wish. There's no kind of noise sweeps in that currently. Rising and descending chords, I kind of played around with automation to achieve that. There's no snare or percussion rolls anywhere. So if we felt we needed more explosion and more power, we can kind of go and add some more details. But I think this is a good framework. So session view, listening, playing back. Let's have a little listen, and if I stop anywhere, I'll try and tell you what I'm going to do, and yep, or if I get all the way through, then I'll sort of go through that afterwards. We'll have a little bit of limiter, we don't need it. All right, there we go. So let me know if you were listening back to that. What was your thoughts? Did you think it worked? Do you think the structure and arrangement? Did you feel it rising and falling, and the tension sort of coming and then going? I mean, as I said, it's not an exploding, going off, explosive track, but it sort of seems to flow nicely through the sections, and I can feel the rise and fall that I'm looking for. As I said, it's not the finished product, it's not mixed or anything like that, but we now have a pretty decent framework. If anything though, there was a couple of things that I probably would still work on and tweak. So let's sort of go through those on a review. But like I said, when you get to this sort of point, this is a great point to park the track, like get it into audio, which you should sort of be doing as often as you can when you can. Get it into audio, bounce it out, play it back, like later tonight I'll have a listen to it some hours from now, and I'll just sort of reevaluate it, and maybe even with a notepad, or just if anything catches me, I'll make a note of it. But it's in good shape to sort of have it at that point. And the next thing, as I said, would be reviewing that, seeing if you still feel the same about the arrangement and structure, and then you'd move on to mixing it down and yeah, doing any little edits or refinements. And for me, as a DJ with a platform where I can play these tracks, I'd be getting straight into wanting to play them out, play it out and test it out and feel, is there anything I need to tweak? DJ Normal Norman, great to see you. Lovely, but might be my headphones, but sounds like it needs more bass. Excellent track though. Thank you very much. Yeah, there is a low bass in here, but again, that's a great comment, by the way, from Normal Norman. Thank you for that. That could be something, right? Perhaps on Norman's listening system and on mine, when I check it later, I feel the bass is a bit weak and it needs to beef that up. But we do have two basses that work together, not always at the same time. But yeah, maybe that's something we need, is more emphasis on that for the club. So what caught my ear? Let's do another save, because I did delete the stuff that we weren't using at the far right. So let's replace what we've got. Because the bits for me, if I was sort of going through and saying, what do I need to review? It's a little bit the end of this first little mini break here. So I'm just going to pop a marker there. It's always kind of bothered me a little bit. I sort of fussed around with this earlier today in here a little bit, because it wasn't quite right. And sometimes you could actually do what I'm doing here, which is you can kind of like, I used to do this a lot actually in my tracks, go down through a section like this, and then you can use Command E on a Mac or Control E. You can split all of that, and then you can actually, go ahead and give it used to be white for me, but we've got quite a lot of white going on here, so let's use black. And you could just sort of say, okay, well, that section there, I need to kind of work on that. But again, you can use markers as well, but you can split that section. So that end of break there doesn't quite work for me. And a little bit like I thought, the track ended up a bit long, right? It's, again, it doesn't really matter, but it is 7 minutes 30. And I felt like in here, this section where I strip it down a bit through here, there's not that much in here. Maybe I could have half of that, so cut that in half, and also then cut, so maybe you could take like a whole chunk like this out, a little bit of both sides of that could be an option, which is why I've just done a save, because we can try that and see what that sounds like. But I feel like there was a little bit, this build from the end of that break to the peak, it's a little bit samey. There are changes, but it's an area where, like I said, we could live with it and stick with it, but it is an area we could maybe change. So if we sort of said like, how about all of that to be removed? So what I will do, quite like this vocal, but maybe I'll just take it, paste it over, come in earlier or later in a second, but I'm going to cut all of that out. I'm going to move my drum fill as well over to the end of phrase, chop that out, and now I'm going to come in with the old slice and slice that section out. Now the way to do that in Ableton, which is super helpful, is we don't have to like kind of manually delete that and then try and drag everything around and line it up. So if you're new to Ableton or still getting your journey underway, finding your way around, if you're in the arrangement view like this, you can highlight a section like that. We used before silence, which is Command I. So if you want to extend something or add a big bit of silence, highlight that section. If we do Command I, we add a beautiful big chunk of silence of that many bars in between. That's not what I want to do here. And you can also cut this, and we could also duplicate it. So if you really love what happens here, we can go up to the edit menu, duplicate time, and that extends that, right? So there's some great tools there that mean you don't have to chop stuff out and then drag things around and try and line them up, which can end up being a nightmare. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to cut delete time from there, right? Which stitches, Ableton stitches that together for us. And I feel like we could also, like I said, delete a bit of the other section as well. So I've kind of I've saved it, which is why I did it on purpose. So I'm going to copy a few things over here because I'm, chopping stuff up a fair bit here. But yeah, I can always go back if I don't like what I'm doing. So I'm actually going to take a bit of that out as well. Okay, and so in the end, what might sort of happen here is for sure some differences to what's going on at the moment, but we might still have this drop out of the open hi-hat, but perhaps not directly there, more over here. This comes across. So I'm just using my eyes for a quick second here to have a think about it. That vocal, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. But yeah, let's start playing from here and go across now and see how that sounds with a little bit of that adjustment in there, cutting away. So essentially I've got rid of like 16 bars, I would guess, of yeah, what I think was a bit too much of same. So I have a feeling we won't really notice that. Like I said, I have a feeling that worked, right? It was a way to cut away 16 bars that probably weren't playing a role. So it's brought everything a bit closer together. And again, where you take the hats out and some of the little detail stuff. So I've struggled to put that vocal back in where it came in originally. And I don't want to throw everything on top of each other, but maybe when I listen through this, there's a space for that little nice little vocal part to come in there somewhere. Also, what you want to do if you do what I just did, we do need to pop into here and kind of have a look and make sure our automation is kind of, not sort of like all sort of scrambled up, because remembering that I've kind of gone in and cut a section out, and so my automation that was originally in between those parts is now missing, and I could kind of hear that because things are happening quicker than they were previously because I brought everything together more. So I'm just going to adjust the baseline automation because of that. And I think the open hi-hat as well, because it has like a little fade out and fade in. So what's sort of going on there when it gets taken out? So I think what could happen, so it sort of fades out there and then it's gone for a bit and then it builds back in. That probably actually does work. Pad chord, potentially not too much happening here. Probably could just bring this over a little bit to there. Zoom out a bit. So yeah, you need to kind of review a little bit of things like this just to make sure that when you cut stuff out, that everything's still okay, right? So let's say that that's not bad for now. Might be a little bit of fine tuning in there, but I've removed what I would call 16 bars of fluff, right? It was just, probably a bit too much in here. We brought everything together. It could mean also that the DJ outro could be modified a bit, but I actually thought it worked. So again, I'm not sure how you felt listening back, but hopefully that worked. So let's do a fresh save on this one as the chop. So Therefore, I can always go back to what I just had as well. So let's say this is part 4, and I'm just going to say edit. So I know that that is a difference. And if I don't like it, I can go right back to my part 4 that we just saved a moment ago, or not a bad idea, I think, to do that. Collect all and save that. And then I'm just going to zoom into this area here, and we'll also see if we can improve this a little bit, this little end of break here and drop. And it's always been about kind of what I wanted to do was tail off and let this vocal own the last bit of the space. So let's try open a hi-hat out there. Too much. So let me just remind myself, what is the automation there? Okay, so if we take the yeah, so it's definitely audible. Maybe we'll just make it a steeper. Let's stretch that back a little bit. That's better for the open hi-hat. A lot better. And then in this drum rack up here, what's going on in it? Sorry, I'm not on the drum rack. I'm on the low bass or upper bass. It's up here. So let's zoom in a bit there. Have a look what we've got. I mean, might as well. That's not playing at all, so we can get rid of that clip because we're not using that. Hi Alex Moreno, good to see you. Buenas tardes. So we're just going into the last few minutes here, just doing a couple of little tweaks. Then we might have another little playthrough through the main section just so we can see what we've got up to, and today is part 4. So in here, let's stitch all of that together. So Command J or Control J, and we'll turn that into a clip, and then let's loop this up. And we'll just work on what's going on in this clip here. So let's take the kicks out. Let's try the pedal hat out as well. Too much. So let's just make this a little bit of a custom pattern. Throw all of these out. Little fill. Okay, better. So I'm just kind of clearing out, again, fluff, removing clutter, making this, giving space to that vocal that comes in, that voice that comes in there. There's too much stuff. It's a bit busy. So just trying to kind of remove that, mellow it down a bit. Let's maybe take out one of these snares and see what that sounds like, all the toms. Or the other way around. Much better. Well, let's actually now try a little bit of hat energy back, but not too much, just to keep the groove. Yeah, okay, now I can just hear it. Something like that. That's improved that a lot. So as I said, you really need to work hard on transitions and end of breaks to, well, in this case, it was kind of clearing space for the vocal, but now we've definitely also removed a lot of energy. It's going to drop nicely here at the end of this. Right, so let's do a recap. What we've done today, we've gone right from literally where we've just been attacking this end of break here. We've gone from there, we've taken the rest of the track and extended it out to finally meet up with the peak loop that came together in parts 1, 2, and 3. We've then attached to the peak loop the break loop, which I'd also sort of composed early on. I had these two main loops here in the arrangement view. So do check out parts 1 and 2 and 3 if you want to follow the journey as to how we've ended up here. And as I said, we've now got this arrangement framework with a DJ intro, outro, and a track length and automations. Quite a lot of automations going on. I've just cut away some stuff that I think we don't need, and now it's just a case of review, refine, check out how it sounds, and then come back in here and maybe tweak a bit of automation, maybe change a little transitional stuff. But generally, I'm not going to compose any new parts for this track. The idea is there, the emotion is there. It's just about now also trying to DJ it out quite soon so that I can get that feedback. Does it sound good with other tracks, you know? But probably I would mix it down when I do that. So let's go through from 2 to the outro and this little marker 2, and then we'll wrap up, I think, for today. So let's have a playback. I think in there I can try that vocal if I didn't already. Let me put it in. Yeah, I'm still not sold on that. I think that's why I muted it. Hello, A2K77. Good afternoon to you. Thank you. Good to see you too. Yeah, well, there you go. That was a little recap of what I've got up to today. So if you sort of came into the stream a little bit later than the beginning, then do head back and watch how that sort of unfolded. And of course, as well, as I said, if you missed parts 1, 2, and 3, well, they're there in a playlist all together from scratch, how we got to this, working in the arrangement, working in Ableton Live, making this indie dance idea. As I said, for now, it's time to bounce it out to audio, start listening back to it in a different environment, to Ableton, reviewing it, thinking about what works, what doesn't. I'm really quite satisfied with that chop that I just did of that 16 bars and cut that fluff away. Like I said, that was 16 bars that I don't think we needed. It means we get to the point a little bit quicker. And like I said, if for some reason that's not the case, well, we can go back to the other one that I saved and work from there. So as always, if you've enjoyed this video, that's great news, and thank you, of course, to those of you that popped up in the chat along the way. Chavi Diaz, Dr. Bones, Nakshatra, DJ Normal Norman, Alex Moreno, A2K77, great to have you on board, and to the rest of you as well. And quick little one, if you would like to learn actually more about Ableton Live and how I can help you, you'll find a link in the description there to booking a free coaching call. I'm coaching Ableton Live since many, many years, so if you'd like to talk about that, you'll find links in the description down there. And please remember to like and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content here. I will see you very, very soon. Until the next time, take care, have a lovely weekend, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. This is Heath, over and out. Ciao, everybody. Till the next time. Bye.